did the ghost come in?
There it
All
is.
right, there it is. We are live.
We are
Um,
live.
welcome. How you doing today,
Oh man, I
Sanyu?
am fantastic. Ruben, and Geraro. I have
What?
seen you on WhatsApp. I have seen you on LinkedIn. I am finally getting a chance to connect with you one on one and in person virtually. So I'm super
Thank you.
excited and super stoked to be here.
I likewise. I don't know how. Again, I'm trying to remember how I came across your literature in the first place. I think it was on LinkedIn because I do spend quite a bit of time, doing research and getting out to people. And wait, we need to get rid of this Instagram. Okay, and your name popped up, and then I know I connected with you because you had some connection with the African think tank. I think
That's
recently
right.
you were at a event with African think tank
I
was a sponsor. So we'll talk more about that, uh, and we'll implement in that. But I thank you for reaching out, and we're gonna start with your name, Sanyu Intanda.
That is me, Sanyu Ntanda.
Ntanda. What's the middle name that you didn't put in there? That you,
Nabosa, Sanyu Nabosa Ntanda.
that's beautiful. That's
I
beautiful.
appreciate that. I
All
appreciate that.
right. All right. I don't want to waste any time because I talked to our guests before we bring them on and just kind of get an idea. They have questions for me and I have questions for them to kind of highlight where we're at. But there was so much again we talked about that I want our audience to hear about. And so again, welcome everybody to another episode of TATT Talks. My name again is Ruben Njiharo, originally from Chad, Africa. I am the engagement coordinator. Directorship is a little bit high, but coordinator, but is director for the African think tank. And so I get the distinct opportunity to host these conversations with individuals who have been connected with the African think tank in one way or the other. So that's whether a vendor, they've been a panelist speaker, they've been a main speaker, they've come to one of our events. So they have some kind of background and knowledge with us. And so we just give them opportunity to come on, and they are the topics. I always get that question: what is the subject, actually, or the topic that we're discussing? I said, no, you are the topic. We're about hearing your story,
Yeah.
your journey, and your words of wisdom that we incorporate all that into our conversation. And so we want to begin today with again Sanyu. Thank you for coming on. Let Before I forget, if you have any questions, please ask questions now. They'll come up here on the chat. We'll incorporate those into the conversation. And uh, I know Sanyu has been doing that when she's been a spectator, and I really appreciate that. This is a conversation, and so we can't do it without individuals doing that. So let's go ahead and start. I'm going to give you the floor, and like I said, we break it up into three parts. One, just who are you? What is your background before you are now? Your family. Where are you from? And if
Mm.
you when you lived there, what were some of the things you enjoyed? Give us a sense of your who you are as an individual.
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you so much for having me. I am honored to be here, Ruben, and to finally connect with you and the whole community of the African think tank. It's really a pleasure. I
Mhm.
will be enjoying every minute of this.
Thank
But
you.
yeah. My name is Sanyu, and I'm born and raised in the Virginia area, so East Coast, Fairfax County. But
Mhm.
I'm Ugandan American. My parents were born and raised in Uganda, and so I grew up in an African household. And of course, that's part of why this is all so close to me. Um, I spent 2.5 years of my formative years of my childhood living in Ghana, in Accra. So what happened
Mhm.
was, yes, my dad was an economist for several years in his first career. And we were all sitting at the dinner table. And let me back up a little bit. So it's my mom, my dad, and there's four of us. I have an older sibling, uh, my sister, and then there's me, and then my two younger brothers who are twins. So two girls, two boys. And we were sitting at the family table at dinner time, as we typically always did. uh, on weeknights. And my dad said, "Guess what, you guys?" And we were like, "What?" And he's like, "We're going to be moving." And we were like, "Where?" And he was like, "To Ghana." And we were like, "What's Ghana?" He's like, "It's a beautiful country in West Africa, and we're gonna pack up pretty soon, and we're going to
Yeah.
leave, and we're gonna go, and we're gonna live there for 2 years." And he explained to us that he got this opportunity as it was a job opportunity, and he had the chance to go on his own, but of course he wanted to be with his wife and kiddos, which as a parent is such a pivotal decision and one of the best decisions in my opinion that I think he could have made because those years transformed me greatly. I went to Ghana International School, and when I was at that school for those 2.5 years, I'm sitting in a classroom, and to the left of me is somebody from, Brazil, and to the right of me is another student from Korea. So it's like truly international. And then on top of that, I get an opportunity to connect with the local Ghanaian kids and to like really tuck into the culture and eat poke and watch all the TV shows and, you know,
Yeah.
pass by Kwame Nkrumah Circle and all that good stuff. And so that really informed a lot of my younger years. Now, fast forward, and we come back to the United States after his mission is done, and that's when I entered seventh grade, and
Hmm.
in this classroom is when I actually wrote this children's book. It was part of an English classroom assignment.
So you wrote the book Jama in seventh grade.
That is correct. Jama and the Search for Courage.
Sorry,
So it
Jama is
was
the Search for Courage in
yeah,
seventh
yeah,
grade. Yeah.
yeah. No, yes, that is correct. So
Uh,
I'm fresh. My Ghana is fresh in my mind because I just lived there for several years. And I'm in an English classroom in a school in Alexandria, Virginia, and I'm 12 years old. And my teacher says, everybody in this classroom is going to write a story. And we're going to write it all throughout the semester. I'm going to bind it up for you. And, we're going to write the manuscript, edit it, and bind it up for you. And you'll have a physical copy of your book at the end of the semester. And so I wrote this story. I took it home and I put it in my childhood bookshelf, like in my childhood bedroom bookshelf. And it sat and it collected dust
a
in
story.
that room
And
for
we're going to write it
years, for
all
decades.
throughout the semester.
Are we having
Sorry, go
feedback?
ahead.
Okay. Um,
Okay.
yeah, so it sat in that bookshelf and it collected dust for years. And then fast forward last year, my parents finally downsized my childhood home, and my mom
Hmm.
found the book and she brought it to a
Wow.
family reunion. And
Okay.
she
So
said,
you'd forgotten about it?
completely,
Wow. Okay.
completely. So she brings this book to the family reunion and she says, "I want you to publish this book." And I was like, "Oh, wow, what is this?"
Okay.
So I opened it up. I read it to my nieces and my nephews, and I was like, "Oh, okay, this is actually pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and
Mhm.
honor your wishes." And that is that. I started September of last year, got into contract with an illustrator, did the whole shebang, published it this year, February, and this is where we are. And I'm telling you,
Man.
moms know best.
Woo. That's let me step back about
Please.
Uganda.
Yeah.
So how did your parents end up in Uganda? Because was it? I know a little about the history of Uganda, Idi Amin in the '70s, and again, it was definitely we had the Indian Americans or sorry, Indians from India who were there as well, and there was some turbulence. But so, what was their journey to the U.S.? Yeah.
Great question. So they were both born and raised in Uganda. My
Mm.
dad came to the States when he was 16
Okay.
for high school. He got actually an incredible opportunity.
Yep.
Um, I don't even know. There's so many details. So what happened was my grandfather heavily involved and active in the church.
Mm,
And there was another minister from the US who came to Uganda and was part of my grandfather's community. And he had an opportunity to take one child to the
hmm.
United States. And it ended up being my dad.
Wow.
It
Wow.
is wild because it is one in a lifetime opportunity situation. So
Hmm.
my dad gets on a flight with this gentleman at 16, comes to the US and starts in school, St. Paul's School on the East Coast,
Okay.
finishes his high school, ends up getting a great opportunity to go to college. He ends up at Yale, ends up getting a great opportunity to go to grad school, ends up at Harvard, does a
Wow.
PhD in economics. And while he's
Okay.
at Harvard, that stuff is happening in Uganda politically. My
Yep.
mom
The 70s.
come
Yeah. Okay.
my
Uh-huh.
mom comes over, and the two of them, they had already known each other, you know,
Mm,
back home,
mm.
but the two of them reconnected again, ended up getting married, then had the four of us, and
Okay.
the rest is history. Yeah.
Yeah. And I want people to share that journey because it's not like we just for those who come as the first generation. And this doesn't pop up here. There was a reasoning and a story behind that, whatever that is, whatever those stories were, and it's important that we know that because that's part of, as you talked about, encapsulating the stories of our parents. You know,
Yeah.
and the details of them walking, the details that your mom has of that time of the 70s with Idi
Yes.
Amin, and those are very
Yes.
powerful. Like I told you the other day, that I've always known that we played Chad when I was 2 years old. But for the first, I knew the general thing, but the first time my mom actually talked about how that day unfolded, like the
Mm,
details that
mm,
she went to
mm,
school and
mm,
there was
mm,
there was shooting and the director came in and they were all under the table and then they ran through
mm.
this. Like that was the first time I really sat back and said, I know the overall picture, but I don't know what actually happened that day. And then what happened the next day when some people came with the white flag and got us on the car. Like those were the detail. It just blew me out of the water. So those are things we need to definitely capture. And so
And
now
the
you're
beauty,
yeah, go
sorry,
ahead.
to get to take on
No,
the beauty is in the details, you know?
yes.
There's You have your, bullet points, your big picture, your
Yeah,
headlines, your titles, but the beauty is in the details, and that's what we
yeah.
need to be documenting.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, go
No, it's
ahead.
it's it's harrowing. No, the floor is yours, so we're gonna make sure you get it. So your dad's here, parents get married. Before you are growing up, how was it like in your home? Because again, I love that before you went, what were your struggles? Because you actually went when you were in fourth grade, if I understand correctly,
So,
because you were
I would have been
6 years.
when I went to Ghana,
Ghana, yeah,
I would have been 9.
you would have been 9. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's look at that. What was your impression of your parents? Maybe you never respected them, but your cultural kind of tension of yes, I'm American, but my parents are African. And were you already beginning to sense that tension already at that time in your life? Did you even care, or was it? Yeah,
I always loved that I am bicultural. I
hmm,
always loved that aspect about it because I would say that I grew up in an African household for sure. Because you're eating
yeah,
African food, you have African rules, you have African traditions, the languages, the Luganda. My parents are speaking Luganda, so I'm hearing all that. And I
yes,
grew up with a lot of Ugandan Americans, as well.
hmm,
So I always identified and appreciated my Ugandan culture. Now, the part
hmm,
that really was strugglicious, I would say, the challenge that I had is that I wasn't represented in media, in books, in movies, and not just as a Ugandan American, but as a person that's bicultural, you know?
hmm, hmm,
I think that's probably part of the struggle because you go to school, you hear all these, you have all these experiences, and then you come home and you're trying to translate them, and it doesn't quite fit. So there's what ended up happening with me is that I would always gravitate towards immigrants' kids because that
Hmm.
was just a natural space for me. And then you don't have to be African. You could be, you know, Korean American, Finnish American, Cambodian American, et cetera, et cetera. That was where my space in school was.
Hmm. I think you froze a little bit. We'll get you back. Okay, we got it. All right. So
Okay.
you were saying that that was your space was gravitating towards immigrant
Kids,
peeps.
immigrant. Hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Um, and was that the same thing for your brothers and sisters, or were they different? I asked that because I have four siblings as well, and our relationship, with
Mm.
the Africa, and that was different and
Mm.
has been different. So, yeah.
That's such a great question. So there's four of us, as I said before, and right now two of us are on the continent and two of us are in the US. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like we all have a very unique and, excuse me, different relationship with the continent. My
Mm-hmm.
sister has done a lot of nonprofit work in Tanzania, in Kenya, in Uganda, and in multiple different African countries. My
Mm-hmm.
brother, as soon as when he graduated from college, he worked in New York for a few years. And as after, I don't know, I can't remember how many years it was, but let's say if it was 4 years, after that, he was like, I am on the continent. And that is the end of the story. He packed up, he moved there, and that's his life now.
Mm-hmm.
And he's very steeped in in the local space. And his children, he's married with a beautiful wife and my sister, and his children speak the local language. He is just so ingrained in everything that has to do with being back home.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
It
awesome.
it manifests so differently.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we have Ubuntu, which I wrote about
Mhm.
that pulls us Africans anywhere around the world together. But I also wrote about the uniqueness. It's really I didn't really think about word of the African diaspora because
Mm.
our relationship to the continent is somewhat different than those who are on the continent, who then are steeped in
Mhm.
the everyday. They see the everyday culture. They're not fighting as
Mhm.
hard to maintain the language with their kids or some of the ancestry. That fight is a different type of fight, right?
Exactly. 100%.
Exactly. And ours is really here. And how do we come together under Ubuntu to do that? Because myself, like I went home when I was 12. I came to the US when I was 4, but my dad took us home when I was 12. And so it was 12 to 16 when I was there. That provided an anchor for me. So that when I
Mm.
came back to the States, I was connected to the content outside of my parents.
So that was the anchor for you, just like Ghana was the
Yes,
anchor for me.
exactly. Exactly. And I got to go back after I finished high school and college. I went home. I actually started my working career like full blown in chat.
Oh,
Right. So,
wow.
that's where I started working and then came here. So I think, and when I left, my thing was I wasn't going to go back to Africa. I was done with it. Actually, I had hated it. I left for my friends, but then I was drawn back. But it's not about me; it's
Mm.
about me. So, um, so this next portion, I mean, we're 18 minutes in, but I really want to get into, draw us back to the journey of being an author. Again, at 7 years of age, you have this book. I want to make sure I see you here. Are you still there? Oh, I lost her. Guys, give us a second. I'm gonna see if I can get her back on. Oh, shit.
Hopefully you can
Hello?
see me.
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me and see me?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, so I just double checked my internet. My internet is very strong. They said it could be an issue with StreamYard.
Okay. That could be. Yeah. I don't know where but you're back on. I'm glad we segued. You didn't start talking yet.
Yeah.
But really the journey of authorship, that your mom, you wrote something, forgot about it. Your mom found it. She could have easily said, "Oh, this is just my daughter's thing," but she was moved to give it to you. to remind you of something you already had done and kind of bring you back into the center. And then you ran with it.
Yeah.
Um, why what was the that year project? Why that particular story? Was it something that came from your time in Ghana? Was it incorporation of things that you learned in your family through friends? Why that particular title and idea or storyline?
That is such a good question. You know, the best person to ask would be my 9-year-old self. And sometimes I try my best to be like, why did I write this? What was I thinking? You know, where did this come from? And I honestly think it has to do with the fact that 2.5 years prior to writing that story, that's where my headspace was. You know, I'm thinking about being on the grounds of Ghana International School, playing with my classmates, and just all the little questions that kids ask each other, like, you know, why do you do this, or what are you wearing, and let's play after school, and what are you eating, and that stuff. All those small little cultural tidbits, they just were probably swirling in my head. And so when
Mhm.
my teacher asked us to write a story, that's probably literally just where my 9-year-old self was like, that's where she
Mhm.
went.
Yeah. And that's it.
Yeah.
Well, like I said early on, I'm interjected. I told you I had my dates because I'm going to sit
Enjoy
back
away.
and enjoy
Enjoy
my
away.
dates. I have a dates while you talk because this is it's a great picture I'm hearing here. So there's actually a quote by Ben. I think it's Ben Okri from um, from Kenya, who's also author. And when you were talking about asking your 9-year-old self, there's a quote that he says, "The best writing is not about the writer. The
Mm.
best writing is absolutely not about the writer. It's about us. It's about the reader." And so when you said in 9 years, okay, I need to write something that others will be gravitating towards, that the reader is the main point, so that you can give it to your 9-year-old self, basically, or to
Oh.
your, you know, I didn't even talk about your family and married children, to your children, to your nieces and nephews, because it's basically for them and the legacy that you're leaving for them as well. So you wrote something basic that that your adult you wrote that set, when you were 9 years old, that got to you when you were an adult. All right. And
Oh my
so,
gosh. You know
yeah,
what? You're really making my gears turn because
yeah.
when I wrote that, I was very uninhibited, right? I'm a child. I'm just literally writing what is in my heart. And as kids,
Mhm,
we are a lot more creative. We have a lot of freedom. We don't feel as restricted. What happens when we become adults is that we start to get influenced by, either society or authority figures in our lives. And we start to restrict ourselves, unfortunately. Like an author
mhm,
who is writing today it's probably at the back of their mind thinking about maybe sales or business, or is this gonna,
mhm.
resonate with my audience? When you're 9 or 12 years old and you're writing a book, you're not thinking about any of that. You're
Yep.
literally just verbatim, just dumping whatever's in your head. And I think
Mhm,
that's such a beautiful thing because there's something that happens in childhood that
mhm,
it's just inexplicable. And
mhm.
as an adult, I think it it would be beneficial if we could all tap into our younger self.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so tell us some of the themes that come out before you go to I don't know if I start with the process. But no, let's talk about the themes of the book. What are some of the themes that you wanted to really to be really highlighted in
Yeah.
this particular book?
So there's three things that come to mind. One is I intentionally did not want the book to be of a particular African country.
Yeah.
For some reason, I wanted it to be on the continent. I wanted it to be in a village, but I don't want to pinpoint myself because I'm trying to reach the masses, and the wider that's the best way to reach a wider scope, right?
Mhm,
And there's plenty of books, children's books that are in Benin or Togo, Ghana, West Africa, East Africa, South Africa, and so they're out there. So I wanted mine to be, just on the continent. And then I wanted it to be in a village because it's underrepresented and that it's true to
Yep.
the original space. And
Hmm.
then it's I wanted it to have kind of like a moral story because that's very in line with these African folk tales or these stories that we used to have when we were, traditionally, I would say there's always kind of you know, some saying like you can't plant a tree today and take the fruit tomorrow or something like that,
So
some
proverb.
wise, yeah, exactly, some wisdom in there. But
Yeah.
mine is less, it's less, intense. It's just more about how courage is not about being fearless, it's about facing fear. And that's
Hmm.
something that adults and children can resonate with, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, so that's where my headspace was. And people ask me all the time, like, how close to the original script is this? How close to the original manuscript is this published book? And I said it's literally 98% because I wanted to take the essence of that 12-year-old girl and put it out there. Now the challenge will be me as an adult now
Hmm.
writing a sequel because now my brain is
Wow.
totally different and
Yeah.
I have to work
Yeah.
really hard to tap back into my younger self to be able
Yeah.
to come up with something that's, attractive.
Yeah. Wow. Man, that's actually a good point. I mean, if you wrote it the sequel, what would that look like? Uh, I
Exactly.
I hope you are though. I mean, that's courage. Don't and how you're going to maneuver all of that
Mm,
because I think as authors, we talked about this. How then do we continue that story from one point to the next? And so we would love to,
mm,
to definitely have that sequel. Take us to the process. We
yeah.
had a lady by the Kelly Brooks, who is a
Mm.
helps individuals. I think you were on that call, and she
Yeah, and
just
we're now
unveiled the
connected as a
whole.
result of
Yeah.
TED Talks.
Okay. Yeah. Unveiled that entire process of writing. So, what was your process, both as a author, and then the logistics of marketing and finding, publisher, all of that stuff. So, I would first your process as the you haven't written the sequel. I know you wrote that when you were a kid, but what would be a process
For
that you
sure.
would approach?
This is a really, really good question because after I published the book, everybody was like, "Oh, I want to publish a book too." But how does it get from like in your head to like, a physical copy? So I actually wrote this down in this was a journal that I journal about everything. A journal that this is all the way back from, let's see, it's probably from uh September actually of last year. I
Hmm.
wrote all of this down. So my process, okay, just overall big picture, there's two different ways to publish a book. You can either self-publish, which means that you kind of take ownership of the whole process by yourself, which means that you have to fund it by yourself.
Yeah.
Or you
Yeah.
can go through the traditional publishing route, which means you write a manuscript, you submit it to several different publishers, and then you wait, you sit, and you pray that one of them will pick up your manuscript and take it to the whole
Hmm.
process. So
Yeah.
I decided to self-publish
Okay.
for several different reasons. And one of the biggest reasons is that I wanted control over the illustrations. It's very
No.
important to me. When you take your book to a publisher, when you write a manuscript and you go traditional publishing, you take your book to a publisher, they control that entire process. So when you get your book, you're like, oh, this is what my characters look like. I
Mm.
wanted control over that. I wanted that hair to be kinky. I wanted her hips to be round. I wanted that
Yeah.
skin, all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, the self-publishing book process. This is where it goes. So, I broke it down to 5 steps. I'm a type A
Yeah.
person.
No, this is
You
good
have
information that those future authors people are listening need to hear. So thank you for sharing it. Yeah.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah. Mhm.
So you have your book idea, and you write your manuscript, right? That's your story. Um, and you have to create it, right? You write your story, that's your whole creation, you're developing it, all that good stuff. That's the first step. The second step is that it needs to be edited. So you have got to clean up all that grammar, punctuation, spelling mistakes, blah, blah, blah. It's got to be edited, proofread. You can get a developmental editor who's going to either edit the story, or you can get a technical editor who's going to do like the grammar and
Mm.
spelling. So that's second part. The third part, and this is for children's book, right, is illustration and design. If it's a children's book, you really have to get into contract with an illustrator, or you could use, God forbid I say this, you could use maybe like AI or ChatGPT for illustration, which is, I would not a
Okay.
place, I would not recommend that, but that it's an
Yeah.
option. Or if it's not a children's book, you're going to find somebody to help you with the design cover. So yeah, that's you're hiring somebody or hopefully outsourcing somebody to do that professionally. The next step is promotion and marketing, because if you have a product that nobody knows about, it's never going to sell. It doesn't matter how great it is. Everybody
Mhm.
needs to know about this product. So that's where you do your book launch, your website, social media, your launch team, et cetera, et cetera. And then last but not least, publication and distribution. You have got to find a way to get this book printed and distributed to mass markets. Now, in my case, I ended up going to Amazon. Amazon has a publishing space called Amazon KDP. And so, what that means is that I give my digital copy to Amazon. And whenever somebody orders a book, Amazon will go ahead and print that book and send it to the customer. And what
Okay.
that means for me is that I don't have to have 2,000 copies of my book sitting in my house. It is print on
Mhm.
demand.
Okay. So what's the pros and cons of that? How much does Amazon get and you get?
Mm,
It's
that's
because if
smart
they're doing
man.
all that, that versus you having 2,000 copies, where yeah, you don't have to do that, but you get more of the cut, I would assume, because you're out there promoting it versus, you know, yeah.
Smart man.
Hmm.
Um, so the pros are that the distribution is a lot easier for me as an author because I don't have to schlep all the copies to individuals. Um, the cons are that they do take a percentage, and that
Hmm.
percentage, it depends on the length of the book, the if it's hard copy, paperback. I mean, there's just so many different. I can't give you a specific number.
Yeah.
Because another option is to get it printed by mass. You could go abroad. I don't want to insert any country here, but you know which one I'm thinking of.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just go to that country, get it mass distributed at a very, very, very cheap fraction, and then bring it back. And then, you distribute yourself. But that's also a
Hmm.
hustle. That's
Yeah.
also a hustle.
Yeah. You have to put the time and energy in if you
Yeah.
have it, maybe, but if you don't, because you have a career or a family or whatever, that even makes it more challenging.
Yeah,
It's,
because you have to think about, then you have to get that book, put it into get the address, ship it, distribute it
yeah.
out. But if you just want to write your stories, they will really take care of that process for you. But there's several different publishers out there, even besides Amazon.
Hmm. But you've already done some promotion. I said that you read your book at a local library. I think
Mhm,
you were at a panel discussion. I don't know if it was last week, a few weeks ago, that the African think tank
mhm,
was involved. So, where have you been able to self promote your book, and
mhm.
what areas in your community?
Yeah, so I did have an event for family and friends, and I
Hmm.
just asked them all to come together and to learn about, what I wrote, and that's, kind of like in a way you would call that a book launch. And that's really the best way for authors to start. You have got to tell your family and friends, and events
Hmm.
are fantastic if you can. If you have the resources to put that together, I would, in the beginning, especially, that's really helpful. But I don't know if it's sustainable long term because you have to keep hosting.
Yeah.
Um, and then I also reached out to my alumni, my university and grad school alumni, and my middle school, where I actually wrote the book. It's called St. Stephen and St. Agnes when I was in seventh grade. And I reached out to
Yeah.
them and told them about, how I wrote this book in in Mrs. Wolf's English class. And they were
Yeah.
thrilled to hear about it. So reaching out to alumni was been really helpful. Um, I did read at the library, local library. Just it was a great opportunity. I'm in several different communities here in Houston, and one of my friends from that community is works at the library or in the library system, administrative
Mhm.
system. So she was able to help coordinate that for me. And that's another benefit of like your network, growing your network.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I've gone to a book festival. There was a BIPOC okay, yeah, there was a children's BIPOC book festival that happened
Okay.
in Houston here at Discovery Green a few months back, and I was fortunate enough to be a part of that book festival. So there's kind of a number of opportunities. I think as authors, we have to kind of keep our eyes and ears open
Hmm.
for different ways in which we can talk about our book and market our book. Plus,
Yeah.
there's podcasts like this or, you know,
Yeah.
showcasts. I was featured on Diaspora Central, which
Hmm.
is another amazing platform here in Houston with another local leader, Gil Ingles. He's the producer and executive leader of that show, and that is
Okay.
an organization that does amazing things for the local African diaspora community here in Houston.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love that because when you're passionate about something, it just really drives where you're going to network it, and hopefully people will come along and support that. And one of the things I think with the African community, I think we're getting better at it is how we supporting one another in our businesses and endeavors. And that is always not always with the purchasing power because I want people to purchase. I'm
Mm.
going to purchase your book.
Thank
It
you. I
helps you.
appreciate that support.
No, I promise you, I'll show it and I'll even take a picture. It
Ah,
shows that
thank
we
you.
care. But it's also there was a gentleman, I can't remember his name, but he really took Africans or the African community to task and saying, look, do you ever promote somebody? Like, do you send their link to your links on LinkedIn or your
Mm.
Facebook? Do you speak about them? Do you share the networks in a way? Because then it allows all of us to be contributors by maybe my network finds an audience for you for what you're doing. And so, I've seen I've gone through LinkedIn, some of the stuff you post. I'm saying repost, repost, and you
I
never know
appreciate
how
that.
that
I
network
appreciate
goes,
that
right?
so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, you never know who's going to see your work. You really
Hmm.
don't.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
This illustration part again. Who did you get to illustrate your book?
Mhm. That's a great question. So
Hmm.
the finding an illustrator is quite it's quite the wild wild west out there. Um,
Okay. Okay. You
um,
learned a few things.
yeah, I sure did. I sure did. There's so many different ways that you can go about finding an illustrator. And some of the suggestions that were given to me were you could look on Fiverr. You could look
Hmm.
on maybe like Upwork or Etsy or Facebook, because it's very rare to ask to know somebody who is an illustrator. So going to a lot of like creative platforms or platforms that are designed for illustrators and designers and creators. There's one called Behance. That's a fantastic resource. I
Okay.
eventually found my illustrators off of Etsy.
Let's see.
So
Okay.
it is a husband and wife team, and all they do, this is their full-time job, all they do is help children book authors illustrate
Oh.
and get their books up and running and out the door. Exactly. That's like their major job. That's their job. So you
Okay.
have, it's called Cubian Studios, and you have Chris, who is the sales guy, and then um, oh gosh, her name is escaping me at the moment, but his wife
Mhm.
is the one who does all of the illustrations. And the good thing with them is that I got a 1 hour, free consultation, and I asked because I had a plethora of questions. I got an opportunity to kind of feel them out, meet them virtually, ask all my questions, understand the process, and eventually I did decide to go with them. I had probably reached out to, and I'm kidding you not, maybe like 13 different illustrators, and started having discussions and negotiations. And illustrating a children's book can be quite pricey. It can go all the way
Okay.
up into the $8,000 to $9,000 per
Wow.
book. But it really just depends on
Hmm.
the number of pages that are in your book, as well as what you're asking for. So
Hmm.
my process was I just got an Excel spreadsheet, listed all my pages, wrote down the descriptions that I needed for each and every single page, sent it to
Okay.
them. They would start illustrating, kick it back to me, and then we'd start going through the edits.
Okay.
And that's when I was like, I need to see the curls in this young boy's hair. I need to see,
I'm
you
paying for
know,
every single one of them anyway. So,
exactly, exactly. Exactly.
exactly.
I need these trees to be banana trees. I need this
Yeah.
land to look, and that was the detail that was so important to me to be able to capture the essence of the images.
Mhm. And I like the word you said, details, because that's we you mentioned that earlier, and I saw that detail in the front page of Jama running down a dirt road with the particular tree that you talked we talked earlier before you jumped on, that you could not mistaken that being in Africa. Of course, the hut was there because this is a village, a young
Mhm.
village boy growing up here as
Yeah,
well. And so I know throughout the book is really important to detail, because behind every detail is a story,
yeah,
of how that Eda village came about, of how it
yeah.
impacted the main characters and the supporting characters as well. And so nothing is thrown to chance in that. So
Exactly.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Another question is, how I want let me start this. How are you getting, are there audiences in Africa that have reached out to you because they've seen your book and say, hey, how do we get copies of this book there, as well? Just because we want to talk about African diaspora, but this is a good resource and access to get back to the continent.
Truthfully, this is the dagger in my heart.
Oh,
I did just have somebody reach out to me and say, I saw your book. Got to see the trailer. I want to purchase your book. How do I get this? And this was in Kampala. The gentleman is in Kampala and he reached out to me. And I said, I am working to get my book onto the continent. I'm still learning the process of the distribution, and I think that's where one of my challenges is.
mm,
So I have a few options. I could get it printed on the continent so that it can be distributed, but to get my book printed here and shipped.
wow, that's not your fault. Again, I think StreamYard is having difficulty. She'll jump on, and I'm sure we'll finish here. So thanks for being patient. Oh, you'll get a copy too. Thank you, guys. If you have any questions, this would be a good time because we got about 10 more minutes. Okay, it's not you. I know there's something going on StreamYard, so I think hopefully this will finish us out.
Fingers
Can you hear
crossed.
me?
I can hear
Yes, finish
and see
cross.
you.
I don't know why it's doing this. But I have a few people jumped online and said they'll get a copy of the book too.
Wow, thank you
We'll
so
see that.
much. I really appreciate that. That is so wow, that's very touching. I
Okay.
appreciate your support. Thank you so much.
Yeah, there's another individual, Kiani Norwood. She has to jump off, but I just want to plug a family member's book, mother and daughter team, my aunt and cousin, Gigi, The Giving Grasshopper. It is a children's book. I share episode with her. Thank you all. And I think what you've done in a way too, we talked about this, is beginning to tap into authors around really children's literature, because I think we look at, Kelly's doing great with the trying to get adults and to write, but really this children's literature area, I think it's, as I see it, unless I'm mistaken, it's still new, especially from the
Mm,
African diaspora point of view. There's not a lot. There's Erica out of Ghana. I think you showed me a book before we jumped on of that author. Now you have Kenyani, who talking about the mother and daughter team, the grasshopper, giving grasshopper, and look into that. So have you found others besides who I mentioned that are interested in that, or is there some
Yeah.
potential collaborations or something new that you can do?
Your questions are spot on, Ruben. I
Okay.
appreciate this so much
Yeah.
because okay, so there's two things. First of all, this work is so beyond me, you know. What I want is for our youth and our children to be able to see themselves in these books, right? And so to be able to participate in this is amazing. But what it has taught me is how few children's books are out there that represent, African culture. Because if I go to Barnes and Noble, I go to the library, I go to so many different bookshelves, and I am scraping to find something that is from an African author. Now you'll find the big ones, maybe like the celebrities, like Lupita Nyong'o has one, a beautiful book called Solway. But apart from that, it's just there's so few. There's such a limited amount. However, I have found a number of resources that I would absolutely love to share with everybody. I don't know how I can, if I can participate in the chat or not. Um,
Yes, you
that have
can. You can
really,
you can throw everything in the chat. Yeah.
oh, I can? Okay. So
Yeah.
there's a wonderful resource called Diverse Book Finder. And I believe, okay, let me actually try to see if I can find the proper, great, it's diversebookfinder.org. And I find them to be a great resource, not just for African children's books, but building a multicultural bookshelf. And there's been so many great gems, books from like Mali, Senegal. And then there's another one called Our Ancestries, and I'm going to share that with you as well. Ourancestries.com. Fantastic. Like if you're really looking for a really good resource in terms of like history and culture for African books. And then I also have sorry, if this is too much, you'll let me know.
No, yeah, I'm just putting it in the overall comments so people can see that as well.
Okay, and
Yeah.
I have one more resource for our viewers. And this one is where to find African children's books. And I'm just going to pull that up and then share that with you guys as well, because my book is great. I want people to buy it. That's fantastic. But what I really want is for people to get a well-rounded, a resource where they can find. And give me just one more minute. I hope this is not taking too long.
No, it's all right.
Okay.
No, so guys, I also plug this onto our local think tank page. So go to those links and do your research, because what what Sanyu is talking about is it takes a lot of research. It takes a lot of back and forth, finding the people. She's doing a lot of the late work, so you don't have to do it. But then once you get utilize that, you do your own late work, so somebody else doesn't have to do as much. And it just keeps,
Yes.
so someone comes to it. But we all, that's uh, we'll all contribute to this to find different ways where we have our own contribution. So yeah.
I appreciate that. And there's also Kunda Kids, and that's also on the last link. But yeah,
Okay.
there's so many different great places, and if we can share the wealth and tell our communities, our families that you can find these books, that would be amazing.
What have you found some of the let me ask you this, have you found some negative pushback to what you're doing? I've never really,
Mhm.
I mean, we always look at the positive. I think there's some underlying things maybe within the diaspora, within the African community, within other communities as well.
Mhm.
You may or may not, but I figure something was just ask that question. Yeah.
Man, spot on again. I appreciate that question. There's always going to be critics or people who are skeptical. I'm born and raised here, right, in the
Mhm.
U.S., and so my perspective of what these books can look like is very different from somebody who's born and raised on the continent. And
Exactly.
I appreciate that, and I acknowledge that, and I respect that. but at the same time, I think there's a space for all of our stories. So somebody has told me, well, what do you know about an African village? You've never lived there or been
Oh,
inside
oh, oh,
one.
oh, oh,
And I respect
oh.
that. I do. But what my perspective is also valid, right? And then I was on a flight one time, and the lady who was I was sitting next to, she was like, "Oh, this is not really a good time for, diversity and books with people of color. Are you going to stop writing?" And I, I had to take a beat. And then I said, "You know what? I will never stop writing because this is
Mhm.
my
Yeah.
perspective and my story. And maybe one day there will be a fantastic and an amazing, great space um,
Mhm. Mhm.
where this
No,
platform is amplified."
no, first thing you amplify the platform. I think you individuals like you and Erica and the author you mentioned, and those are pioneers in this space. And I really encourage that you'll keep growing it. Hopefully you could all jump on a Zoom call and have a discussion about your books. I don't know why.
That
It's
would be
keeping using,
amazing.
yeah, using technology in order to make it happen. And then, we talked about AI, friend Ben Collins, find a way to incorporate all of these pieces. But that's the thing. You spent 2 years in Africa, in Ghana. I'm assuming in those 2 years you went to a village,
Of
whether it's
course,
a
of
visit,
course.
whatever. So somebody's
Mm,
saying that to you just because the majority of your life was spent in the US. You don't need much time. I would
mm,
say maybe in places general, but especially in Africa, if you're doing even 2 weeks, it could
mm,
change your perspective, right? More
mm,
time adds to that. But what you shared is that that 2 years gave it a pivot.
mm,
Your mind pivoted a little bit and just began to see a bigger world in that small local place, right?
mhm,
With the diversity that you had around individuals you went to school with, and vis-a-vis your life in the US, and also in your life when you came back. So
mm,
that, you know, I'm glad you own that story and didn't feel deflated. Yeah, you might have felt hurt, but not deflated by the comments of those individuals. And there's no good time to write except now.
mm,
Right? Someone may not
mhm,
read it, and somewhere down the road, because if you look at some popular books or movies, they were done when people didn't watch them. But now they've kind of found a audience in a generation that needed to hear it more
mhm.
than the generation it was written in. Right? And that's
Oh,
that's how it works. Like, so your book has a place
yeah.
in time immemorial.
And here's the thing, I think every story has a place, and this is why
Mhm.
I encourage people, if you are a creative, write, draw, film, illustrate, do it because, if we as Africans don't tell our stories, who will? And
Mhm.
if they tell
Mhm.
that story, is it going to be fully fleshed and dynamic and as multifaceted as it needs to be? Because
Mhm.
Chimamanda says there's danger in the single narrative,
Yes. I heard that. Yeah.
and it is so important that we bring all the multifaceted flavors and complexities of who we are, you know, to the table.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
again, this vision is so beyond me. I encourage all creatives to document in whatever which way you possibly can.
Mhm. Yeah, and you may just have to add more to your plate and make that happen. If we can find a way to, to do that to help you out, we will.
Done, done.
We have about 7 minutes, and I want you to speak a little bit about this. Was it the 32nd annual conference, Roots and Routes, a
Ye-
celebration of the African diaspora and its impact on service at home and abroad? I mean, that's a mouthful.
It
Do you
sure
remember
is.
that? You
This is
were
the Leja Bulela
Oui,
event.
Leja Bulela, which I don't know
Yes.
what that means, but
Okay.
maybe you can enlighten us. Yeah.
Okay. This is the power of the African think tank. Okay. Let me just tell you
Mm.
this story.
Okay.
So
Tell it.
it's a
Let me get my dates ready. Go ahead.
your
Tell the story.
dates ready.
Go ahead.
Your dates and your water. Okay.
My dates and my water. This is back home, man. This is what we live on. Dates and water. Go ahead.
All right. All right. I'm gonna try my best to get it to squeeze this in.
Mhm.
It's like a Wednesday afternoon. and I get a voicemail from a gentleman that I don't know. I've never met this person. And the reason why it didn't even ring on my phone is because I block unknown calls. So I get the voicemail, and he's introducing himself and saying, we have a panel speaking event this Saturday, and we're looking for folks to talk about their experience with the African diaspora, the Black immigrant experience. And he
Hmm.
explains to me about this organization called Leja Bulela, which is the Congolese diaspora here in the US that pull together resources to be able to help um, the Congolese community back on the continent. And I said, okay, sure, I'll do it. I've never met him, but I asked him, I
Hmm.
said, how did you get my phone number? Like, where did this connection come from? He's like, I know that you're connected to the African think tank, and our executive director reached out. No, our executive director gave me your name and number.
Hmm.
I said, that's great. I have never met her, but I am grateful to her. So
Yeah.
this is the power of the African think tank. That call happened
Mhm.
on Wednesday. I attended this event on Saturday. I got to meet multiple members in the African think tank, local Houston chapter, as well as those who were, highly involved in Leja Bulela. And
Mhm.
it was a beautiful, beautiful intersection of two phenomenal organizations that are African focused and all about empowerment and supporting the community. And so I was one out of four, one out of three panelist members who got to speak about our experiences. It was
Okay.
amazing.
No, man, I would have loved that. I mean, I would have loved to attend that. I don't know where I was, but
Oh, well,
Houston seems to be popping. I got to come down there and check out all those multi events, and we have our think tank. I pitch Fridays or pitch Thursdays now coming up at the I think end of the month with African Think Tank, and so we're excited about that. What I also love about this is here you are, Ugandan who lived in Ghana,
Yep.
who went to a Congolese
Yep.
event. And so there's really
Yes.
this pan-Africanism that you have. There's a uniqueness in our individual stories, a uniqueness in the history of each of our countries, and then there's a shared experience as Africans. And so
Yes.
as we start to close up, can you tell me what you think or what you felt with the shared experience of Africans in general? So you're trying to
Mm.
represent the entire continent, a
Mm.
continent that you have not visited entirely, which is too big to do. I haven't, but yet there's a
Mm.
connection there that pushes you to promote through literature the story of Africa.
I think as Africans, we understand each other in a way that i- is inexplicable. You know,
Mm,
I I see that the different foods and the cultures and the traditions and the languages, yes, they are different, but we have so much more in common than not. And when I
mm,
see an African person, I really do think, in some form or fashion, in some shape or form, that this is my brother, this is my sister. There's
mm,
just a shared unique experience. I failed to
mm,
mention that I had spent many, many a summer in Uganda growing up as a child.
mm.
And
That's
that
good.
Ugandan experience also informed my headspace and
Yeah.
informed who I am today.
Well, let's we got to tell me about one of the summers. What was one of the extraordinary things in those summers you spent as a in Uganda?
So
So,
growing up in the
something.
US, I don't get to be immersed with my aunties and my uncles and my family members. Going back
Mhm,
on the continent in Uganda specifically, that is when I got to develop all these relationships and see just how socially rich Africa
mm,
is, but at the same time, and I say this with grace, professionally poor. Whereas in the
mm.
United States, I feel like we're professionally rich and
Yeah,
socially poor because of the isolation.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I envy your brother, man. The isolation here, man, it is nasty at times. And I've known some Africans who said, I'm done. Like they've taken the brave step and said, I would rather struggle in a professional situation,
Yep.
be socially rich,
Yep.
rather than being professional, like how you put it, professionally well. but socially poor. And so I think each
100%.
person responds to that, and vice versa. So I like how we don't criticize each other's stories because it's unique, but we
Mm,
challenge each other's spaces to see
mm.
what can be done. I am going to give you the last word because we are at 1 hour, and I want to cut this at 1 hour. Really think again, what is your word of encouragement to the African diaspora about
Mm,
who they are and how they can contribute, not just one single narrative, the
mm,
danger of one single narrative, but how can they contribute voices to the multiplicity of narratives? And why is that
mm,
important? Whether through any genre, you have chosen writing and chosen to go specific.
mm.
You've mentioned about podcasts and getting the story out there. Again, what's your final word of encouragement for that?
My final word is to lean in. I think that when I was younger, did not I wanted to assimilate
Mm-hmm,
at a higher level because I thought that that's what's going to lead to success and blah, blah, blah,
mm-hmm,
blah. But I would say lean in and engage. Just show up. If somebody invites you somewhere and it's an African event, just show up. If somebody calls you and says, I need help with, um, flying back home or somebody has passed away, just find a way to engage and to connect. It doesn't have to be big, but just participate because that's what we really need. We really just
mm-hmm,
need to people to engage and participate.
mm-hmm. Thank you. Um, I say to all my guests, I want to definitely bring them back and hash into more specific things. And definitely you're a guest that I will invite back. But I really appreciate your time, Sanyu. Ntanda. Am I saying
Ntanda.
Ntanda? I love that. Oh man, anyway. I
I
love it.
love it. I
I
love
love
it.
your story. People, I encourage, everyone who's watching this to look at the links that Sanyu shared, because that is gold. The sharing of information is very powerful. So if you're looking to be a writer in general, find connections for illustration or individuals who can help you in this journey. Reach out to her
Yeah.
as well. I think she's an open book and wants to be
Yep.
able to have that dialogue as well. And if you're able, purchase her books. I think that's one way we show our support, we show our love, and she's very grateful for that. All of people who are struggling out there to be authors and writing, especially in African diaspora, need that support. And that's a way to build your library, as you were talking earlier, for yourself and for uh, your um, the African community here in the U.S. So again, thank you for your time, my sister.
Mr.
And
Gerardo, I appreciate you. And I look forward to the day that we can connect again in person. Let's make
we
it
will.
happen.
I'm coming to Houston at some point, so we'll do that. All right.
All right. Thanks so much, friend. I appreciate you.
All right. Thank you. Take care. Bye,
Bye.
everybody. See you next week. All right.